So picture this. Alex Honnold, the most famous climber on the planet, is scaling the 1,667-foot Taipei 101 skyscraper. No ropes, no safety net. Millions of us are watching, totally breathless. But you know what? The real drama, the real story, didn't start until he was safely back on the ground. It all kicked off with a single comment he made about his paycheck.
Right, so he's talking about what Netflix paid him for this incredible live broadcast, and he calls the amount embarrassingly small. And that one phrase just lit a fuse. A guy who literally risks his life for a living felt underpaid. Seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? Well, it gets complicated.
Okay, so what exactly is an embarrassingly small amount? Well, the New York Times did some digging, and sources said the deal was somewhere in the mid six figures. Let's call it about $500,000. Now, for a 91-minute climb, that sounds like a huge payday to most of us. So why on earth would he call it embarrassing?
And this is the paradox at the heart of the whole thing. In the very same conversation, Honnold says that, really, he would have done the climb for free. He said he wasn't getting paid to climb, he was getting paid for the spectacle. So, which is it? Is the pay too small, or is it irrelevant?
This right here is what makes this story so much more than just a sports headline. It forces us to ask some really tough questions. What's the real value of an achievement like this? Do we measure it in dollars, in pure passion, or maybe in the number of eyeballs it can grab? All right, to really get to the bottom of this, we've got to start with the man at the center of the storm. Let's talk about who Alex Honnold is and the absolutely mind-boggling scale of what he did.
Alex Honnold is, to put it mildly, not your typical pro athlete. This is a guy who was still living out of his van long after he became a millionaire. Famously, an MRI scan of his brain showed his amygdala, the brain's fear center, is just quiet. But don't ever mistake that for being reckless. The man prepares for every single climb with an obsessive, almost scientific level of detail.
And to really get Honnold's mindset, you have to understand this term, dirtbag. Now, it doesn't sound like a compliment, right? But in the climbing world, it's a badge of honor. It means you're someone who puts the passion, the experience, above everything else, especially paychecks and fancy stuff. This is the culture that forged him.
And this was the challenge he set his sights on. Taipei 101, a true marvel of modern engineering. And this wasn't some random idea either. Honnold had been talking about climbing this specific building for more than a decade. For him, this was a personal quest.
Okay, so we've got the man and we've got his mountain. Now let's dive into the real heart of the controversy, the money. Because as soon as that $500,000 number got out, oh boy, everyone had an opinion on what this thing was actually worth. And this chart, wow, this really puts Honnold's embarrassingly small comment into perspective, doesn't it? When you stack it up against other live events Netflix produced, you start to see his point. Tom Brady reportedly got $25 million for a comedy roast. Jake Paul's deals are in a whole other solar system. Suddenly, Honnold's payday starts to look less like a king's ransom and more like a rounding error. And then the whole debate got a massive jolt from a completely different universe. The biggest creator on YouTube, Mr. Beast, just casually weighed in. And he suggested that in his world, the creator economy, the value of a spectacle like this is actually way, way higher. And this just perfectly illustrates the fundamental culture clash at play here. For a traditional media giant like Netflix, they take on the financial risk, they handle all the insane logistics, and the talent, even Alex Honnold, is just one line item in a massive production budget. But in Mr. Beast's world, the creator is the business. They take the risk themselves, and their value is tied directly to viral potential, how many millions of views they can pull. It's two completely different ways of calculating what something is worth. So as you can imagine, the public was completely torn. You had one camp saying he was totally fleeced, he risked his life, he was the entire show. But then another group would argue back, hang on, the hardest part wasn't the climb. It was getting the legal permission to even touch the building, and Netflix did that. And then, of course, you have Honnold's own purist dirtbag perspective. He was just there for the climb, and the money was just a weird side effect. But here's the thing. This story goes so much deeper than just a debate about money. The decision to broadcast this death-defying act live to millions of people had some very real and honestly pretty dangerous consequences. So let's just trace the chain of events. The live show is a massive hit, but almost immediately, photos and videos start popping up of people trying to copy him, amateurs attempting to climb the base of the skyscraper. The building's management, terrified of a tragedy, had to act, and they acted fast. This whole episode brought up a huge ethical question. Philosophers and media experts started arguing that when you turn a high-risk stunt into mass entertainment, the platform, in this case Netflix, actually takes on a massive amount of responsibility for encouraging this kind of copycat behavior, maybe even more responsibility than the athlete himself. And the final word from Taipei 101's chair was blunt and absolute. Honnold's climb was incredible, it was historic, but it was also the last. That door is now officially and permanently closed. So, we've gone through the debate over the paycheck and the dangerous aftermath. Let's step back for a second and see what this whole thing tells us about the price of passion in our modern world, a world that is obsessed with viral spectacle. When you lay it all out like this, you can see this story is really about a massive collision of different worldviews. For Honnold, the purist, passion is everything, money is just a tool, and risk is something personal and meticulously calculated. For Netflix, the corporation, passion is a story you can sell, money is a budget line, and risk is a liability you have to manage. For Mr. Beast, representing this new creator economy, risk is the key to viewership, which is how you measure value. And for all of us watching, it's a confusing mix of all of it, a spectacle that is somehow both inspiring and absolutely terrifying. So, if there's one big thing to take away from all this, it's that the argument over Alex Honnold's paycheck was never really about the money. Not at all. It was like holding up a mirror to ourselves, forcing us to see our own conflicting values. What do we reward more? The authentic passion of a purist? The slick production of a commercial spectacle? Or should our main priority be the safety of the crowd that spectacle might inspire? Ultimately, this one climb up one building halfway across the world pushes us right up against a profound question for our time. When personal passion becomes public performance, and when risking your life becomes content, who's responsible and who gets to decide what that's all worth? The answer is anything but simple.